Hello everybody, my name is Cat Joe, and welcome to the video. I just wanted to put out my initial impressions on Colony. I've spent a decent amount of time playing Colony since his release about a week ago, but I wanted to make sure I had a well thought out, well informed opinion formed on him. I didn't just want to put out a quick video talking about, oh, what his abilities are, this and that. I wanted to actually get to know him a little bit. And by no means have I mastered Colony. I've lost a lot of games trying to figure him out, but no big deal. Win some, you lose some. It's not all about winning them all. It's about learning the game, playing the game, having fun with the game. And with a new character, I sort of expected to lose quite a few games against the people still trying to run the strongest of the strong. People who run constant Atriox Locust spam. Even after the patch, Locusts are still really strong. I don't think a direct damage nerf is the way to hit them, but that's a topic for another day, and that's a very, very heated topic, so we're not going to get into that in this video. What we are going to get into is how I feel Colony performs. So, just right out the gate, I think Colony is not the character to choose if you're going to rush. Which is a win for my channel, right? This is the channel that doesn't do rushes. I don't like to be the first one to attack unless it's late enough in the game. I want to be prepared, I kind of want to have fun with it, I don't want to build the early units like scouts that aren't really meant to kill bases and then kill bases with them. That's not what I'm about. But then again, if you're a returning viewer, you already knew that. So, here I'm just trying to test out what works for Colony and what doesn't, and this is my most recent game as of the making of this video, and it was a really good feeling game for me. It wasn't one-sided in either direction, at least not too much, I'd hope. But it was a pretty good game for me, and I do end up victorious. But I wanted to sort of evaluate why I was victorious and what kinds of tactics I used to push for the victory, specifically those attributed to Colony. So, to start this out, I wanted to talk about a few of Colony's abilities before it gets too far in the video. Specifically, Combat Repair is the first one. Combat Repair is his final ability at the top of the wheel, and it is just a powerhouse of an ability. If you haven't been unlocking it and you've been playing Colony, you're probably not making the best decisions ability-wise. This ability is hands down Colony's most useful ability, in my personal opinion. Feel free to dispute that as you'd like, but the evidence I've got is pretty strong for it. So, Combat Repair consistently heals, like it is never ending. As soon as you grab that ability with a leader point, you are healing everything you've got, every single unit and every single building. A big point for this is you don't have to build engineers. It's still a good idea to build engineers in just about any gameplay that gets to late game, but you don't have to. I've had a few games where I've gotten rushed, and then ultimately, after the rush ends, I pick up Combat Repair, and I can heal my base without ever having to put an engineer near it. And all the units that survive, if I have units that survive. If I don't lose a building or any turrets, that is a huge plus, especially if they just put a bunch of damage into the main base structure itself. They can get it half down, and you wait just a couple of minutes, and that will be fully repaired. It is invaluable of an ability, but being the high tier ability that it is, you can't get it until later in the game. So, make your choices a little wisely. You may want engineers early on in the game still. That's up to you. I found that I like to get engineers anyway, just in case, to bring around with the army, so I've got even more healing bonus while I'm pushing or while I'm moving around the map. I like to keep my engineers with my army. I've been building engineers to go with grunts at the beginning of games because you can heal them pretty quickly. and keep an entire group of grunts, I suppose, alive when you're taking power nodes. You don't have to lose any of those to power nodes, and you don't have to build a ton of them to take out power nodes without losing any. You can just build 3 or 4, put an engineer or 2 into the mix, and then keep them all alive as long as you need them to. But that's as any character. So another ability that Colony has that I feel like is underutilized by most people at this point in the game. I mean, Colony is still early, but it's a really interesting idea to me. That ability is the Living Barrier drop. So, Living Barrier drops a bunch of caltrop-like spikes onto the ground. They block off paths. They are kind of tough to place. They don't like to place in certain locations, like too close to a base. If you drop it over an army, it won't drop onto the units. If you start the drop before you move something like air units into that location, they'll still drop, usually. I've noticed sometimes that it doesn't like to cooperate as well as I would like it to, but it still works. Earlier in this video you saw him rush me with a few grunts with skitterers on them. I ended up dropping the Living Barrier behind him so it would slow any other units he might have coming up, and if he tried to run away, it would slow them from running away so I could kill more of them and cause even more havoc to what he's decided to invest his supplies into. I've also noticed on the subject of skitterers that elites, even as weak as they might seem, are better than something like grunts paired with skitterers. They're just too effective of a counter to the grunts compared to the skitterers countering elites. Skitterers are kind of expensive and take a while to build. They are a pretty strong rush unit, it seems, but for late game purposes, it's probably not as worth your time to invest in them. I have had a little bit of success with attaching skitterers late game to blisterbacks though. So you build a handful of blisterbacks and you can plant them away from someone's base that you want to attack, and if they all have skitterers on them, if they try to move something like Cyclopes or whatever else infantry unit close to them, the skitterers will make quick work of those. You'll probably still lose a few, but you should have a good defense. Definitely better than if you didn't have any skitterers, because the blisterbacks can't shoot those units that are really close to them, and so you can let them stay planted, continue hitting the base, and the skitterers will attack whatever's close to them. Limited success with that strategy. It was a fun strategy to try, but it's definitely not top tier. If you're looking for something new to try with skitterers, I do recommend it. It was a lot of fun. Side note, you saw I just built a sensor tower. I've been experimenting with those more, and here in a little bit that sensor tower is actually going to work to my advantage quite a bit. I didn't really see the value in them before, but I'm starting to think that I might build a sensor tower on each of my bases, at least when I do strategies like this where I take a risk building on their side of the map. Building that sensor tower gives you the view range that can really give you the edge. And I've noticed it barely, ever so slightly, increases the range your turrets can shoot. Not significantly, but enough to match locusts. I did a few tests in a private skirmish match with a friend of mine and found that sensor towers do give them the same range as a locust. I believe UNSC actually have like a footstep farther than locusts, which is kind of nice because you can see them coming and you can start shooting them back rather than just losing your turrets instantly, although they will still die to the locusts very quickly. Here I try to use Living Barrier to cut him off. As you see, his army sort of got in the way. It cut off the tail end, but a lot of them still dropped, and I was able to sort of bottleneck them around it so that he had to walk straight into my Hunter's Brand there. So at this point, since I've got a base on his side of the map, I'm trying to keep it concealed as much as I can. I know he knows it's there, and I know he wants it gone. So I'm trying to fight off his army. You see that I lose pretty horribly, and he's got a lot of units still. I'm not super worried because they're mostly elites, and elites don't do much damage at all to bases. But I am worried about my units that I have trekking across the map that I have queued to that global rally point. So I'm just not making the greatest plays here. I do end up losing my hunter captain, who is incredibly slow and incredibly tanky. I'll touch on that in a bit as well. But I end up defending this base pretty successfully and building up an army here. And as you can see, my turrets are not able to shoot up that hill at the moment, but later it's a little odd. They do end up shooting pretty far away, which, like right there, they were shooting all the way up there, but they weren't shooting there before. They're definitely indecisive about that right now. We'll see if they can be updated to be a little more consistent in the future, but you never know. So I was surprised to get that Locust through all of his units there and to my base alive. The engineers heal it. I end up actually keeping that Locust, and he does quite a bit of work for me. Even though it's just one Locust, he does a good amount of damage for me. This is a mirror match, so I'm playing against another colony, and when he drops his living barrier, that Locust takes out a ton of them. So here I'm just trying to build up an army like any other game. I try to use my living barrier to block him off, and he actually moves to the back of my base, and I was a little concerned because he had a few more units than I did, that's for sure. But he just dropped his own living barrier back there, and my turret, because of the sensor tower, is able to see it and shoot it, and just goes to town on that thing, which is pretty nice. So I said I wanted to touch on the hunter captain, and that is a really big thing for this. A lot of people have been struggling with the hunter captain, but he's really not as big of a threat as he might seem. Yes, he does have incredible range, like Locust style range, so he can shoot far, and he does do a decent amount of damage, but he's really slow. I did a few tests in skirmish matches with the hunter captain as well, and I found that if you put him, a fully upgraded hunter captain, into one of the garrisons near somebody's base, he can shoot a turret and usually a single base slot, if not two of the base slots. And he is really hard to kill out of a garrison. We tested a few different units. An entire army of blisterbacks, close range, was not able to kill it. He was killing the blisterbacks too fast, so they were initially taking his health down enough that it looked like they might win, but he killed enough of them that he was able to start healing. With combat repair and his siphon upgrade, I believe it's his second upgrade, he heals an insane amount, and putting him in a garrison gives him a ton of extra armor, and he's already a tanky unit. That's why he's so slow, is because he has so much armor. They had to try to balance him some way. So if he gets into a garrison, it's going to be really hard to counter him. The only two units in bulk that we tested that worked to get him out of a garrison was an army of elites, and we only tested banished units. It wasn't a very extensive test, just by the way. But elites were able to do it relatively quickly, but that was an entire army of elites, as well as an army of locusts, which the locusts killed him faster than the elites did, even though elites are the counter. That's due to the locust damage output. Honestly, I think their overall damage to units needs to be dramatically dropped. I feel like it's just a flat damage rate, damage per second rate, so locusts are able to do more damage per second than any other unit in this game, and that's why they're so effective against armies, because there's not enough of a scale to knock them down against units. There is a significant scale, especially against air and hunters and cyclopes now, but it's not enough to keep an army of locusts from walking away and picking off your army, even if you have the counter to them. It is easier to defeat them now but it's still not as easy as you might expect. But again, this isn't about locusts. I just wanted to mention that if you see a hunter captain in a garrison and you do happen to have an army of locusts, you can take that out, so you don't have to be afraid. On that note, you really don't have to be afraid of that garrison at all. If it does garrison somewhere where it can shoot your base, yes, it's going to be a nuisance, and yes, you're going to want to get it out of there, but it probably is not going to be worth your time. The reason being is he can only do so much damage, and if you see him in any other garrison where he's not causing problems, leave him there. I mean, oh, we also tested an army of vultures. In actual match, a friend of mine had an army of vultures, could not kill the hunter captain with phoenix missiles, all targeted onto it while it was in a garrison. So just ignore it. If he's in a garrison and he's not causing any harm, any harm, ignore him. He is slow, he doesn't do as much damage as some other units do, and he's not worth your time. If he's in a garrison, don't bother him. If he's out of a garrison, he's significantly weaker, you can take him out, and it might be beneficial to, because of his taunt ability. But if he's in a garrison, not bothering anything, leave him alone. I cannot stress that enough. So back to the gameplay here. I finally pushed through this man's army. You saw me use Living Barrier a few times to block off his army. At this point, I've got a significant enough force that after having won the battle between my army and his army, I'm pretty comfortable in trying to take out his base. So I'm using different abilities of his, such as the Engineer Swarm to keep things healed, using the Hunter's Brand. My opponent used the Hunter's Brand on me. I'm trying to target these back turret slots, as well as his foundry and any other unit or any other buildings on his base that can build units, because I want to stop his production of an army as much as I can. Then I'm going to take out the turrets. I know that the turrets are enough of a threat to want to take them out first. I want to take out those buildings first. So as you can see, I've got this base under control. He doesn't have as many units as I do. He doesn't have enough units to counter what I've got. He's already used his Hunter Brand ability, which is Colony's only offensive ability, I believe. Directly offensive, that is. So I know I've got this base under wraps. So I continue on. As you see, I've got a very diverse army. Again, very diverse armies are very hard to counter. I do have a few locusts, and I'll mention why. Locusts, as anti-building, are invaluable. Yes, they are very irritating to play against, especially if your opponent builds only locusts. But they are not the end-all be-all unit that they might seem to be. They do have counters. You just need to test it a few different things, figure out what works, use your abilities on them. If you see an army of locusts, you definitely want to get rid of them. But having a few in your own army will significantly increase the rate that you can destroy somebody's base, which is instrumental in winning matches. You can kill a base, you can usually win. So you see here, I dropped the Living Barrier in between my army and his base. Unfortunately, that's an idea for people who use locust spam. You can drop it in between an army and a base, and because the locusts can shoot so far away, they can shoot over it, while your opponent has to destroy the Living Barrier to get to your locusts. It's an effective strategy. I'm sorry for anyone who was hoping that that would stay hidden, but I'm trying to help everyone improve their gameplays. Having a few locusts in my army, as well as elites, I was able to use that to my advantage with the range. I could shoot down across that toward his base and toward his units without having to worry about as much coming back to me. I also believe that it distracted a lot of his units, including his locust, because they wanted to target that as the closest sort of unit that they could kill. And locusts, being anti-building, usually auto-target buildings. So since the Living Barrier counts as a building, it's a great distraction against locusts, just to keep in mind. But, being a building, they do kill it fast, so it won't buy you that much time. So as you can see, I effectively destroyed that base, took out most of his army. I'm just kind of picking up stray units and stray upgrades to spend my points at this point in time. I have got 4 of the 6 maps on the bases on the map, so I know he can only be in the 2 locations. So I walk back to his main base slot, take that out again while he's building it, and then he never gets to build a new base. So a pretty effective match for me. I think it was a pretty good showing of some of Colony's abilities and some of the strategies I've sort of figured out with Colony. What are you guys' thoughts? What do you think about Colony so far? Are you having a hard time? Do you think this might help you out a little bit? Do you think he needs a little bit of help? I honestly think he's a little weak because he's so defensive of a character, but if you use him effectively offensively, using these defensive abilities to survive longer in your offensive fights, you can really turn the tide of battle with Colony late game. He's more effective than I initially thought, and it's taken me a little bit of time to figure him out. By no means am I done using Colony. I definitely think there's a lot more to learn, but I think I've got him in a pretty good place right now. So there's my victory of this match. As you can see, he didn't even destroy a single mini base of mine. I kept the pressure on too hard, and once I got combat repair, my units were just outdoing his in a normal one-on-one battle. Oh, sorry, he was Colony. They were sort of even if he also had combat repair. I'm sure he did. I wanted to add in 2 additional clips here. This one you're seeing right now is testing of Colony's combat repair versus Decimus's Boundless Siphon and Boundless Fury. So 1 combat point for Colony, or leader point for Colony, versus 2 leader points invested for Decimus in passive abilities. Now combat repair and Boundless Fury share the same spot on the leader wheel, the ability wheel. I wanted to make this clear that combat power is more effective than both Boundless Fury in the same slot and Boundless Siphon. Combat power being an ability that continuously repairs all of your units and your buildings at all points in time in a match, whereas Boundless Siphon only heals Decimus's units when they are doing damage to another unit, and Boundless Fury gives them a permanent damage increase. The damage increase and the health increase for Decimus do not match well against a combat power unit for Colony. I wanted to test it here with Scarabs because they are the bulkiest units between the 2 Covenant leaders, so it gives the best representation on the amount of health left afterward. So as you can see here, the Decimus Scarab, which is the blue one on the left, I am Colony, I'm right on the right. The blue one reached red health a few seconds sooner, and the red one, only affected by combat repair, won. Not by a significant amount of health, but it did win, and that's only 1 passive ability against 2. That's slightly imbalanced in my opinion. This second clip is adding in 5 grunts to the Colony side in order to let the Decimus Scarab attack those grunts while it's still attacking the Scarab on the other side as well. It's attacking the grunts to activate Killing Frenzy, the first ability on Decimus's ability wheel. Each kill gives a 50% damage buff for the next 6 seconds as of this recent update. Having Boundless Fury, Boundless Siphon, and Killing Frenzy active, the Decimus Scarab does win the fight by a more significant margin than the Colony Scarab. I just wanted to put this out there that you have to have 3 passives to win against the 1, but it's up in the air. So, thank you everybody for watching. I hope this was informative. Let me know your thoughts.